Social media influencers are horrible monsters, but rich people having influence over the masses has been a thing for centuries. I mean, look at the Pope. And long before we had the Kardashians, we had the Medicis. And a lot of the Medici family actually became popes. Not Catherine, however. Catherine would become the Queen of France. And to this day, 500 years later, they still refer to her as the Serpent Queen, the Black Queen, the Evil Queen, the Witch Queen. Welcome to the story of Catherine de Medici. Catherine was born April 13th, 1519 to her mother Madeline and her father Duke Lorenzo. Catherine's mother was from a pretty influential, noble French family, and her father Lorenzo, though he was a ruler, he was not from any type of noble family. He was from the Medici family. And that family really only got into the mix of noble Italian families in like the mid 1400s. They were a family of bankers and financiers who had grown up a lot of influence and power by lending to rich European families. The Medici family is actually wild as fuck. They were proper celebrities and they would go on to flex on the people of Florence for centuries. And they gained a lot of power through really strategic marriages, including little Catherine, who would one day marry extremely well. Her own parents were in a political marriage between France and Italy as sort of a fuck you to the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian Habsburg. There's a lot of Habsburg overlap in this story, so if you want to go watch my Habsburg playlist, you get to see it from the other side. But we are in the French's business right now, and we are against the Habsburgs in this one. So anyway, both of Catherine's parents would die very young. The pair were married just the year before Catherine's birth, and just a few days after Catherine's birth, her mother would pass away, likely of childbed fever. And so Catherine only had one parent, her father, Lorenzo, for the next week or so, until he also died, making our little baby Catherine, or Caterina in Italian, a parentless orphan as a newborn baby. Tough odds in the 1500s, but her family stepped up. First by her grandmother and then by her aunt. She received a noble education in Florence and Rome, of course heavily dripped in Catholicism. And from a young age, she spoke multiple languages, including Italian, Latin, and French. And as a young girl, she's seen as a very easy political pawn by a lot of very powerful men. The French king wanted to bring Catherine to the French court so he could groom her into being the perfect little bride for one of his sons one day. But the Pope, who was also her uncle, Leo X, did not want that. He instead wanted her to be raised in Florence, where she would marry an Italian. So her uncle Pope just kiboshed the French plan, naming Caterina the Duchess of Urbino. But that title was pretty useless pretty quickly because of some political conflict. But she's a Medici. She's still gonna live like a duchess, staying in her family's elaborate palaces all over Italy. Palaces that were frequented by some of the greatest minds and artists of the Italian Renaissance. Because the Medici family were cultural icons. When I tell you it's Kardashians, it's Kardashians. But there is a period of time where they're in between Medici family popes, and it does get pretty shaky for the family. In 1527, they are overthrown from papal power by Charles V, Charles Habsburg, the Holy Roman Emperor, brings his German and Spanish troops to come sack Rome. And suddenly little Caterina is getting bounced all around the city to different nunneries. But the Medicis would find their way back to prominence. They settle things with Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, and they decide they're actually going to work together in fear of the Turks. And then in 1930, she's called to Rome by Pope Clement, where he is telling her she's going to have an arranged marriage. And the boys were hot for Caterina. Scottish King James V sent the Duke of Albany twice to try to arrange marriage negotiations for Caterina. And after 7 months of trying to negotiate for marriage, it didn't work out. However, their paths do cross in the future. If you know, you know. And the man that ultimately won her hand in marriage was Prince Henry, who was the second son to the King of France. And on October 28th, 1533, the pair would get married. Oh, that's soon. Mark your calendars. And it's the wedding of the century. She's Catherine now, and everyone is fucking it up well into the morning. And then her Pope uncle blessed their marital bed, and her new father-in-law watched them consummate the marriage. They're like 14, by the way. And the new marriage is super weird for Catherine. Her new husband is a real bummer. I mean, he probably had some PTSD since he spent a lot of his childhood in a cage in Spain when he got captured by Emperor Charles V. Classic Habsburgs. But now he doesn't know how to act, and he's a serial cheater and a terrible partner for Catherine. Kathy's getting along pretty well in the French court, until a political shift after her Pope uncle died and the new Pope said fuck you France and refused to pay Catherine's dowry. And then her father-in-law, King Francis, switched it up on her. He said, actually, I hate that broke-ass immigrant teen bride. And now Cathy's toes are to the fire, because she has to prove herself and her worth not only to the country of France, but to the king himself. And the best way to accomplish that was obviously to produce a baby boy, an heir and a spare for her husband. And that pressure would keep building and building, especially in 1536, when her brother-in-law, who was the next in line for the throne, died of a fever. So now the need for an heir is at an all-time high, and it is just not happening. It would be 10 long, childless years of marriage before they were able to produce one. But back to the dead brother-in-law. Some people suspected it was Catherine who poisoned him so that she could steal the French crown. And honestly, the foreign common-born woman who was married into French royalty and assassinated the Dauphin of France is a juicy rumor and hot gossip, so I actually don't blame them for spreading that around. Sucks for Cathy though, who's basically just trying to survive. She's struggling with her lack of ability to have a child, but make no mistake, she's still a Medici. Even at her worst, she is still more fabulous than the French, and she is inspiring a lot of themes of the Italian Renaissance inside the French court. Cathy would take another blow to her status and her worth, however, when her horn dog husband claimed his mistress and the birth of his baby girl with her in 1537. So this is a really tight spot for Catherine, with a lot of the Frenchies calling for a divorce and to have her little ass shipped back to Italy. The haters are also calling her a sorceress, which is a very serious accusation at this time, though it is ridiculous. Part of why she's coined with the nickname the Black Queen, a nickname she hasn't been able to shake for 500 fucking years. Plus, she's worldly, cultured, and seemingly infertile, so all of that is screaming 16th century witch for sure. Though she's desperate, she's rubbing herbs on herself, she's drinking piss, it's dire out here. And finally, after a decade of trying, Catherine would give birth to a healthy baby boy. Baby Francis was born in January of 1544, and then quickly after, she had her daughter Elizabeth. And you might remember Elizabeth from the Wives of Philip II video, because Elizabeth was a child bride of the Habsburgs. And then after that, oh bitch, the floodgates are open. It's baby after baby. They end up having like 10 total children, 9 of them surviving infancy, and 7 of them reaching marrying age. But her success in providing the king a family could not save her marriage. He was still treating her like complete ass and had fallen in love with his elderly mistress, who he was just promoting through the ranks of government. And in this time of Catherine popping out 50-11 kids, her father-in-law dies. And Catherine and her bitch-ass husband Henry become the king and queen of France. And Catherine realizes she might not be able to lean on her husband to clean up her image, but she can lean on her kids, particularly her fuck-ass sons, and she really leans into being the mother of future kings. It's a total rebrand, but will it work? Well, I can tell you it gets fucking crazy. The decision-making? Questionable, but you can make a good decision. So be the best and leave me a comment so I can use it for the next video, and we'll go tear France's ass up.